This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, first of all, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining on Sunday morning. So, before we get started, probably let me make sure what's the agenda or what's the purpose of we meeting today. Okay, so primarily, most of you either would be an experienced person or you might be a fresher or someone from non-IT. Typically, you want to switch into a better career, right? And DevOps or SRE being one of the popular domain in IT where you can easily switch and you can get a good profile. So being said that, you would definitely have questions about how do you convert your current profile where you might be a non-IT guy or a fresher, or again, you've been working into some other domain in IT. How do you convert it into what the industry is looking forward? Correct? So that's what we are going to completely understand. And I'm going to help you to go through almost a different kind of approach, what you can take, as well as how do you ensure that if you already have some experience, how does that experience add value to your overall profile? Because it is not like you are switching your job. Okay. So with that, my name is Adam, and I'm a senior architect by profession, and also I'm a mentor and trainer by passion. So ideally, we've been training more than thousands and thousands of students every year, and like I said earlier, our primary reason is to make sure first you guys understand what kind of career that you have forward, and for the next 4 or 5 years, what is that you should be expecting out of your career and how do you grow in it. So with this, let's get started. Okay. Now, as soon as I show this picture, everyone would understand that I'm talking about iPhone. So now we know iPhone is one of the most expensive phone, right? It even goes until lakh or more than that. Now, even though it's very expensive, why is that almost every one of us are trying to buy that phone? It is because of what we call it as some characteristics, right? Like iPhone has a better performance when compared to any other phone. That is one of the reason that what we have to do is we are going to buy that. Okay. And then if you compare to other phones, these are less hackable. That is again a popular reason that why many working professionals go with iPhone. And then obviously one of the other reason why we use iPhone is we try to capture beautiful pictures or some reels or videos and we want to share it with all our friends and relatives, right? So we always want to share what's happening in our life. And then whatever phone that you're going to have, ideally, it doesn't mean that it has to be an old fashioned, but you always have to be something in a trendy, correct? So that's when the design is quite sleek and it's very compact. So this is the reason, even though we know iPhone is very, very expensive, we still go for that. Okay. So keep this in mind. The same way, now, if you go to the market, now, whether we call it as a DevOps or a SRE or a DevSecOps, because nowadays there are different streams in DevOps. How is that a DevOps engineer is being paid? A fresher in DevOps is paid anywhere between a range of 6 to 9 lakhs, okay, depending on the type of company. And for a mid-range experienced person, you can easily expect anything between 25 to 30 lakhs. The same way, as you become more and more senior, probably like let's say 10 years or 12 years, you can easily get anything between 40 to 60 lakhs, and it keeps growing with your experience. So by saying it, like an iPhone, we also want to get a very high package, correct? But that's when it's not like you go to a shop and you just say that, hey, give me a phone, and shop owner will not just give any blindly a phone and he will charge heftily for it, correct? So that's the same way. There are engineers, but how is that companies are paying certain people more than 2 times or 3 times what a regular engineer is going to be paid? So that's the focus that I want you to take it out of this session today. So to understand this, now if you go to a market or let's say an organization, we already have different people who are working in the company. Like there will be programmers, there will be QA engineers, there will be system administrators, there will be support engineers, right? Now they all have some kind of fixed responsibility that they are taking care of. But eventually, for market or for business to grow, companies need something additionally. What is that? So with the current trend of the market, whatever the products or the service that a company is giving, they want to deliver their product or service very, very fast. Okay. Let it be a shopping website, okay, or there is a website where you watch movies or videos. You will not be happy if the streaming is very slow or they are not frequently updating their page with new products, correct? So this is when a company needs to make sure that they are not just writing the program or testing it, but they also want to make sure that the product or the service, whatever they are giving to the customers, should be continuously there. Because even let's assume you open your web page at any point of time, you already have the latest available, right? Let's say you're posting something on your social networking page and you want your friends to be immediately seeing it, and you prefer that they give likes, and you always check, right, whether they have checked or not. So that's where the delay in whatever the service that we are going to give is not going to happen if it is delayed. So ideally, we need to make sure that as a company, whatever that we are trying to deliver has to be fast and continuously there. Then scalability. So from a business point, now since again IPL match is going on, most of you would be watching it online, and have you noted on the corner of your screen, it will be showing how many views are going on, correct? So the views keep increasing depending on how interesting the match is there. Now you see starting, it would be like 2 crore views, 3 crore views, and it keeps going even until 17 crores, 20 crores view. So now for a company or an organization, it is not just sufficient that they are just running some application. Now, when more and more users are going to access your product or your web page or take the service, you need to make sure whatever is needed to help those customers view your application or use your application. Okay. So it is just again like a simple example. If I give, I might have a room with 100 seats. Now, instead of 100 people, now let's say suddenly 200 people come, can I just tell them that, hey, wait, I can only accommodate only 100 people. Only when these 100 people go out, I'll accommodate other 100. So will that happen in the match? No, right? They cannot say that maximum I can allow is, let's say, 5 crores. So unless and until the 5 crore people log out, I cannot allow the next set of people. So if that is the way of business model, then we will not be able to grow. So this is when, for a business, whatever is needed. So when I say whatever is needed, it is on the infrastructure. So to run the application, to support crores and crores of people, you need to make sure whether you need machines or database or some kind of storage or network. So whatever is needed, you need to make sure that it is scalable easily. Correct? Because we can't wait for an hour to get everything. We need everything in seconds. So that's when, for a company, we need to make sure scalability is very, very important, so that the application or the service, whatever we are using from a company, should be available for us. Next, high availability. So what is high availability? Okay. Now, let's say the same match you're watching. Now, company has the ability to allow people by scaling their infrastructure, but will you be happy if there are a lot of technical glitches in which you are not able to stream your page properly, or there are frequent disconnections happening because of a problem in the application, right? Same time, let's say you're trying to do a shopping, I mean, you can do shopping anytime you want, right? Or let's say I'm a foodie and I suddenly crave to eat something at probably at midnight. Okay, then I should be able to log in and I should be able to kind of order anything that I want, or even I want to shop, it should be available. So what will happen in all these scenarios is the application or the service, whatever we are accessing from the you know companies, should be always available. Okay, because as a customer we don't have to worry whether it is not working, someone has to fix it, or is it really accessible or not. From a customer, I need to be available for me 24 bar 7. So a company now needs to take additional measure in order to ensure whatever the services that we are trying to run, it's available for a customer to use at any point of time. Okay, so that is called as high availability. Uh, yeah, so that's a demo. I think there's no one that's online. Hey, guys, online, just 1 minute. Mm, okay. Yeah, you can come sit. It's okay. Um, sorry, guys, just give me a minute. Yeah. Um, all right. So, hope I'm audible. Okay, so the next thing what we need to look at is security. So what's security? See again, let's say you are accessing your banking website and you are trying to do some transaction. Okay, will you be happy if it's been hacked or it gets disconnected frequently and your transaction is failing? Okay, so for a company, what they have to do now is it's not just sufficient that we have to ensure that it is always running. We also have to make sure that it is completely secured and it is safe, because only then customer will trust to use our application. Okay, so now for a company, apart from running all these applications, scalability and other things, it's very much necessary for us to make sure that the application is secure and it's always available at any point of time. Okay, so now from an organization, if we talk about managing whatever that I said, that high availability or scalability or continuous delivery, now we already have people like developers, QA engineers, or we also have people like system admin, but that is not sufficient. So in order to get those four benefits of the company or the goals, now companies are expecting us to have some new skills. Okay, so what are those new skills that if you look? So the first new skill what a company is looking at is called as platform. So what do you mean by platform? So now, whether you are developing or whether you are testing something, you need to run the application. So where do you run the application? So to run the application, you need something like a laptop or a physical machine or a virtual machine. But as of now, the entire infrastructure or whatever we call it as the machines is not on physical or it's not on virtual. It is more on what we call it as cloud. So for a company, everyone needs to be aware of this platform called cloud, because even if you're going to do a development or testing, right, you need to know how do you create a machine and how to work on a machine. Because let's assume you are going to do some work on your laptop. No one will expect that you should first learn how to operate the laptop and then start using it. So when you go to a company, the same way, you are supposed to take some responsibility. But ideally, what is expected is you should be familiar with a platform like cloud. So in cloud, what is a machine or what is a server? What is a database? How does a storage look? How does your network look, right? So those are the information that you need to be aware in cloud. Then the next one is called as release management. Now, for any one of us, if you are focusing on continuous delivery, right, because that is the goal of the company, we need to know what product we are going to release and at what time we are going to release, how we are going to release. Okay, because if you have noticed, almost every company will be doing some kind of changes or releases almost every week, right? So in that case, do we really know what has to be created, what has to be tested, and what has to be delivered to customers? And at the same time, when I say delivery, it should also be having zero impact. For example, let's say Google is updating something. Now, will Google say that I'm going to update, so please don't use my website for 1 hour or 2 hours? They don't do. So release management is all about making sure what is needed for us to deliver continuously, it is working. So that way, we should be exactly understanding that how developers are working, how testing is being performed, whether testing has been done or not, and what has to be given to the customer and at what time. So this entire process of ensuring that the product is getting delivered continuously is what we call it as release management. Now, it is a common goal or it's a common skill that everyone should be knowing, because when you go to a company, you cannot just say that I know how to do an automation, but unless and until you don't know how to manage those releases, it will be difficult for us to work with different people in end-to-end situations. Okay. Then comes your infrastructure, because this is where, now let's say we know what is cloud. For example, we know what is AWS, and in AWS, how to create machine, how to create a database. But for achieving a scalability, that was the goal that I was showing in the previous slide. What is scalability? Now you're watching a match. Now the views is going from 5 crores to 17 crores. So let's assume I have 10 machines with me. Now I need 1,000 machines. Now you know how to create a machine in AWS, but can you now automate it in such a way that you can create 1,000 machines in a matter of seconds? So that is when knowing the platform is alone not sufficient. What company is expecting us is you also need to know how to automate it, because I cannot go to AWS and click thousands of buttons to create 1,000 machines. So I need something to automate, so that whether it is a machine or whether it is a database or whether it is a storage, whatever that you want in your infra, you should be able to automate. So this is another primary skill what companies are looking. So understand, you need to know what is cloud, and at the same time, you need to know how to automate the things inside the cloud. So that is what we call it as automating infrastructure skill. Now what's next? Okay. Now again, think in the same way. Match is happening. Views have gone to 17 crores. So you wanted thousands of machines. First, you automate creating those thousands of machines using some infrastructure automation. But what happened next? So when you say 1,000 machines are there, not all the 1,000 machines are going to be used in the same way, right? Because there are different components of application. See, this is what we will understand a little deeper in the master class. But if you take an application, there will be different parts of the application, like front end, middle tier, okay, API server or back end. Now, in the 1,000 machines, we will not be running everything on every machine. So you need to know what to run. Now, for that, ideally, any machine you create, you need to configure, because let's assume all of us have the same type of laptop, but are we using it in the same way? No, because what I install will be different, what you install will be different. So that way, creating 1,000 machines is one skill, but inside each machine, what need to be configured? So configuration means what needs to be installed, what needs to be running, what user should be there, right? You have to basically configure each and every machine. Now, you have to think about automating all those 1,000 machines or whatever that you have created for your need. So that is when automating the configurations of different servers is another skill which a company is looking at. Okay, so if you understand creating infrastructure automatically, then you are now also should be familiar with how to configure those thousands of machines. Now, what's the next skill that they are going to look at? So now, another part of the skill what a company needs is how do you automate the applications build, or what we call it as testing. Now, on a very high level, what do you mean by build? So if you take a product, right, a product consists of multiple program files. Okay, like for example, you might have your WhatsApp or any game application you're installing in your mobile. You install one application, but internally it has multiple files that it gets downloaded, right? So if you understand, the application you're installing is like a zip file, or it's like a package inside which lot of files are there. So when a developer is writing a program, okay, they will be writing hundreds and hundreds of programs, but we cannot directly take it. So what we have to do, we need to collectively take the program files that we need and convert it into what we call it as a product. And that product is what we are going to consume. Okay. So technically, a software build or a build is a process where you pick whatever the programs you want and you convert it into a product. It's by itself a big process. That's what we have to learn later. But eventually, for a company, when developers are continuously writing their program, we also need to know how to automate the process of creating a product out of it whenever I want. So that's where your continuous delivery will be achievable. So another important skill what companies is expecting is you should also be familiar with how to automate those builds or any kind of testing. Now, we don't have to know what to test, but we need to know if there is some testing is going to happen, how can you help the QA team to automate it? So that's the next skill what they are looking at. Now, eventually, once it is done, the next step is what we call it as automating deployment. So what is the skill called automating deployment, or what is deployment in a very high level? Now, deployment is nothing but, so let's say that there is an application with you, there is a machine. Okay. How will you use your application? So you have to download the application from App Store or from any Google Store, whatever you want. And then you need to install in your machine. And after that, you need to configure that to give some proper input. For example, let's say you're logging into your Facebook or your WhatsApp. You need to configure it with the proper phone number, give OTP, only then it will start running. So that's exactly what we call it as deployment. So deployment means you have built the application. You need to take that application to whatever the machine you want, install it and configure it and properly start running the application. Okay. So all those steps that it takes for us to make sure that the product is installed on the respective machine and it is going to run is what we call it as deployment. Now, why should we automate it? Because now, once again, I'll go back to the same match scenario. Let's assume that you have the 17 crore views for that. you wanted to create 1,000 machines, and that is where you created it using infrastructure automation. And in that 1,000 machines, you automatically configured. That is the another skill. But now you want to run all the applications that you have built in those 1,000 machines. So then the process is what we call it as deployment. So automating infra is a skill, configuring the machine is another skill, automating the build is another skill, and how do you make sure you are running all these applications in those thousands of machines that you want is what we call it as automating deployment. Okay. Now, eventually, what after this? So then comes your monitoring, because now if you want to achieve the high availability, so it is not sufficient for us just to tell that I can create thousands of machines, I can deploy my applications in it, but at any point of time, we need to make sure that your application is running fine. Okay. So whatever is needed for us to make sure that the application is always running fine is another skill which a company is expecting on the monitoring. And the last, which is most recent one that companies added to this skill set is security. So now you need to know how to monitor, but at the same time, you also need to know how do we secure those applications. Because like I said, whether you are using your banking website or any other website, you will not be happy if it gets hacked or it's been, you know, reachable by others. So that is when anything that we are doing within the company, we need to make sure that it's completely secure. So these are all the skills what companies are expecting. And eventually, for each of the skill, there is a name or there is a process using which you can achieve. Okay. So if you now go back and look at it, the platform that I was calling is cloud. So now, if you're going to a company, they will expect you that you should be familiar with at least one of the cloud. That could be like AWS or Azure or GCP. Next, they will be expecting you that you are familiar with the release management, which is what we call it as agile. So in an agile way, how developers will work, how QA will work, and how are we going to deliver it to the customers? Because if you have heard, we have some process called CI, CD, all those things will be part of your release management. And then the name that we give for infrastructure automation is IAC. So it's referred as infrastructure as code. So you need to know how do you automate your infrastructure. So that's called as IAC. Same way, to automate your configurations of server, we call it as configuration as code or configuration management. And then for your build and testing automation, we call it as pipeline. So that's where we call it as a build pipeline or a CI pipeline. Okay. And then when we talk about your deployment automation, the concept is called as containers. So that's where the most popular tool like Docker and Kubernetes will be coming in. And then for your monitoring, so far, once again, whenever we say monitoring, we will always think of monitoring a machine. That's all. Now, what will you monitor in a machine? Whether the machine has enough CPU, the machine has enough RAM, the machine has enough hard disk. So that is what we used to think. But now, for ensuring that your application is always available or high availability, it is not sufficient for us only to monitor a machine, but we also have to monitor from a performance. For example, is your application really performing well because of too many connections that is happening? Or what is the transaction time that it is taking when you try to access your application, right? So that's the depth of monitoring that what a company wants us to do. And this is where there is a new subdivision of your DevOps, which is called as SRE, which companies are started to focus. So SRE stands for Site Reliability Engineering. So remember, companies don't want to just monitor a machine, but they also want to monitor an application and also for its performance. And then the security part automation is again another subdivision, which they started naming it as DevSecOps, which means whatever that you do in this particular skill, you always have to make sure that it is secure. Okay. So that's where these are almost like 9 best skills what market is expecting now if you're trying to switch to a profile. Because this is where what we need to understand, it's a combination of this. Not every company will need one individual person to work on all of them. But when you go out, they might call with different name. For example, they might call the position as DevOps position, and they might pick 2 or 3 out of it. Or they might call you SRE, and they might focus more into only on the monitoring side or the infrastructure side. Or they might call the team as a DevSecOps team, and they might focus heavily only on the security. Now, this completely depends on which team you are joining and what is the responsibility that they want. But eventually, for us to make sure that when we are going out to the market, we are familiar with all the skills that is needed. So that is how it will be easy for you to go and compare any profile, and you can easily apply for any position. Okay. Now, what's next? Now, another biggest expectation which companies are having is coding. Now, again, many of us keep asking this question like, okay, I want to now switch my career into something like cloud or DevOps or SRE. Do I need to know coding? Okay. Now, I want to make sure one thing is clear. Coding is not programming. Okay. Because for a DevOps engineer or for a SRE engineer, you don't need to know the program. So what is program? So program means you don't need to know how to write a C or a C++ file or a Java program or a Node program or a Go language program. Okay. But what is needed for us? What is needed for us is the syntax, because in the automation, we have so many tools available like Docker, Kubernetes, Jenkins, Terraform, Ansible. Now, for all of them, we don't have a dashboard by which you are going to automate. What you're going to do is typically you're going to write some syntax, okay, and tell what is the automation that you're going to do. So that's where we'll be using different files like Docker files, YAML files, or for Terraform, we have TF files or JSON files, using which there is some syntax we will write. So it's something like you want to apply to a company for a position, or in your school and college days when you're applying for a leave, there is a format, right? Similar to that, in all this tool, there is a syntax in which you are going to write something and tell how the automation should happen. So that's exactly what we call it as coding. So if you ask me now, coding is definitely needed, but coding is not programming. So you don't need to know the programming, but for each of the automation, you definitely need to know how to automate by giving a syntax. Then by this, you don't have to know the programming, but definitely we need to know something else called as scripting. So what's exactly scripting? Now, you have all these tools that we were talking about for infrastructure automation, configuration automation, pipeline, security, deployments, but there will be some small things that we want to work, which doesn't need a big tool. Now, let's say an example. I want to go to a machine and delete some files. I want to search some folder and delete some files, or I want to send an email to 10 people. Now, for this, I don't need to use a tool like Kubernetes, Docker, Jenkins, Terraform, which is not at all the purpose. So, for those kind of small tasks to help our day to day, we need to use scripting. Okay. Again, which scripting to use? Now, for beginners, you can always start with something like Shell, but as you move forward, the more and more monitoring and other things that you do, it's also definitely necessary for us to know something like a Python scripting. Because once again, Python also has OOPS concept, and it also has a program side. Now, we don't have to know that much to switch into your DevOps or SRE, but definitely you need to know how to automate your day-to-day tasks using your Python scripting. So this is when, along with the other skills that I was talking about, cloud, infrastructure or configuration management, deployments, DevSecOps, and SRE, you also need to be familiar with at least one scripting. Okay. So with all these, So now if you understand, market needs this kind of new skills. So this is when, for most of us, for example, let's say that you might be fresher or you might be from non-IT, okay, where you want to try by switching your profile with some 3 years or 4 years experience, or if you are already working, you might be in any one of them. Now, I'm just broadly classifying as developers or system admin, or you can be into a support engineering role, or you could be into some kind of administration like your SAP, middleware, database, or you can also be some kind of managers where you're just taking care of the projects and release. Now, what is happening? We keep hearing about recessions, right? So what's exactly recession? Recession is not like they are sending away people. First, they are trying to reduce the cost. Okay. Now, have you heard by saying recession, they are closing the company? No. So let's assume a team has 100 people. They are letting go maybe 10% of the people. That's what is happening, or 7% or 8%. So whatever is the number. Now, how do they derive to that number? And why only that 10% or 8% is being affected? That is because what they need is people who can take care of multiple responsibilities, because instead of paying individually, like I have a separate developer, I have a separate QA person, I have a separate system admin, I have a separate support engineer. Now, instead of paying 4 guys or 5 guys, what they are trying to do is they are expecting that every one of us go through what we call it as multiple responsibility. How? That is where automation is coming. Because now, regardless of whether you are a QA engineer or a support engineer or a system admin, if you are looking at the market trend from the last couple of years, they are trying to add more and more responsibilities. So this is how, instead of paying 5 guys, they will pay only 3 guys, and they are ready to pay more. But why they are paying? Because they want us to take more responsibility. So what are those more responsibilities? Is the skills which I was talking in the beginning, like infrastructure automation or deployment or SRE or DevSecOps. So this way, what is happening now? Whether you like it or not, companies are expecting more and more responsibilities, for which you definitely need to know more and more automation skills. So eventually, if you are someone who are already in the IT, and this is where you will start feeling that after some years you become stagnated. Okay. Now you cannot go back to the company and say, hey, I'm performing well, give me a hike. Or if you want a better promotion or a hike, company cannot just give you if you're doing the same job again and again. So that's where, for new challenges, companies is expecting that along with your current work, you have these new skills which will help the company to achieve the goal of high availability, continuous delivery, and the security part of it, or scalability. So that's when they started forming these new designations. Okay, so that new designation can be called as a DevOps, or it can be called as DevSecOps, or it can be called as SRE. So what is that they are looking at? You are still going to have your core skill like testing or development or your support, but that is just going to be 10 or 15% of your work. So what is the next 80% or 75% of your work? Is this new automation. So that's when companies are paying to only those candidates who are aware of those skills. Okay. So now let me give you a picture on how you can switch your profile. Okay. Again, so let's take an example. Now you are a person who are already working, and you have now learned all these tools, but still, when you go and start applying to the company, your profile will not be shortlisted. Okay. Or you are looking down the line for the next 4 or 5 years, you should be clear on what is that we are going to do. Now, this is where, when you go to a company, you should be showcasing that you have relevant experience with whatever the skills that they are looking at. Okay, now let's assume there is an opening for DevOps or SRE or DevSecOps. You go and apply. When will they be ready to pay you more is only when, if you say and if you prove that you have some relevant experience in it. Because if I just blindly go and say, hey, I have theoretical knowledge, but I don't have any practical knowledge, then they might not give you that much of salary, or they will say that I'm looking for a better candidate. But if you try to showcase in such a way that you have already worked into the same domain for 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, whatever that you want to take, then your value will be added. Because now if I say, hey, I am a DevOps engineer with 5 years of relevant experience, and even I can have an overall of 10 years or 8 years, whatever it is. So the more and more relevant experience that you showcase, it will be beneficial for you to achieve the right position. So how do you convert? Now, this is when DevOps is not something different. Now, this is something which you could have already done in your company. That's how you are going to present. Now, how? For example, let's say you are a system admin and you were taking care of VMs. So you can tell, for example, around 3 or 4 years back, our company moved to cloud. So this is where what happened. I took up additional responsibility of managing everything in the cloud. So this is how I was introduced to cloud. Now, when we talk about cloud, then immediately you should say that I know how to automate it. Then I learned some tools for that. But at the same time, I also learned some tools to automate the server configuration. So this is how, being a system admin, you can say you moved to cloud, and from cloud you started focusing on various automation, and then I focused on ensuring that there is a lot of security, and slowly from security you can talk about I was involved in automating the deployments, and I also started taking care of pipelines. And by that, with a overall of 5 years of relevant experience or 4 years of relevant experience, you can say I have worked on end-to-end automation. So this is how you are a system admin earlier, but now you can say my profile is completely switched into DevOps. And this is how you should showcase that overall of whatever the years of experience that you have. Okay. The same thing holds good. Suppose, let's say you are a support engineer. What you can tell that you are taking care of only application support or some server support, but slowly from that, what happens? They asked us to monitor everything. So what do you mean by monitoring? So this is when you can say, I started monitoring cloud, I started monitoring machines, I also started monitoring my applications for performance. So that is where you were introduced into automating various monitoring tools. And slowly from that, you can say, I was focusing on deployment automation. And from deployment automation, you can start telling, I also took care of the cloud infrastructure. And slowly from there, I started focusing on pipelines. And on a recent project, I have worked on security. And this is how, from the last couple of years, I worked on different projects on end-to-end automation in DevOps. And this way, you can say, I was a support engineer a couple of years back or 2 years back or whatever you want to take. And slowly now my position is moved into a full-fledged DevOps engineer. Okay. Same thing is for QA engineers. Now, since as a QA engineer, one of the first thing you can say, apart from my testing, I focused on automating the pipelines this is needed for build, and slowly I focused on automating the deployments and work towards concepts like Docker and Kubernetes. And once it is done, I also focused on security of this. But end of the day, when I was working on all these things, you should also be able to say that I took care of the infrastructure. And this is how end to end, from a QA engineer over a period of couple of years, I transitioned into a DevOps engineer or SRE engineer. Okay. So the only thing is you need to know how to start, but end of the day, all the skills that you have, you can showcase. Because remember, it's not going to be something like in one project you will be working on all the tools. It takes time. And that's where even in the interviews, right, when the HR asks, they will ask how much of relevant experience you have, how many years you have worked. Now, if you are a developer, how do you convert it? Now, eventually you can start saying you are a senior developer. Now your company moved to cloud. So you were the one who defined the strategies in cloud. You were the one who helped the company in migrating or moving from your VM to cloud, what services to use, what not to use. That is where you can start. And slowly from there, you can say you helped in automating the infrastructure, and then you helped in automating the deployments, pipelines, and then security. And slowly this way, from being a developer, you were able to handle the entire automation of the release. Okay. Now, suppose if you are more into any other support like the database administration or middleware administration, now what you can start with is, okay, rather than just talking about only monitoring or managing a particular application, you can say all the machines that I have taken care, I first automated it. And now for that, I used some tool like Ansible for 3 years or 4 years. And from there, I moved into cloud, where in the cloud, you can say like an AWS or Azure, I automated things. Now for that, whatever is the security, I started working on some tools, and then I focused on the deployments, pipelines, and this is how from being a database admin or a middle tier admin or someone in the same field, you can say over a period of time, I got an opportunity to completely switch my profile. And this is how my current profile is completely into DevOps or SRE. Now, ideally, if you're a fresher, then you can also typically take the same, because when you go out, don't just go out and just say that I have learned something, but try to showcase some projects in which you're going to highlight that these are the skills that I used to automate a particular problem. And this is what I helped in this project. So that way it will be easy for you. And even for those who want to switch from a non-IT to IT background, you have to prepare yourself. Then you need to first know that whatever is your 1 or 2 year experience you're going to put, you have to put something relevant to this, and then you need to know how to showcase it. Okay. So with all these, now comes the last part is, okay, how do I prepare? And now what and all I need to know. Uh, Unfortunately, this is where, once again, what is happening when more and more automation is needed, there are new responsibilities coming into the picture. Because if you now go to the company, what is happening? Some people call or started calling, there is a separate DevOps team, there is a separate SRE team, there is a separate DevSecOps team. So end of the day, if you understand, it's all about different responsibilities. Okay. So if you go to a company, if they say core DevOps, the focus for the team or your responsibility is more going to be automating the infrastructure, automating the deployments, okay, and automating the build pipelines. That's what is the focus will be. But if you go to the company and join as an SRE, you will still be working on cloud automation of deployment pipelines. But additionally, they will expect you more about, do you know how networking works? Do you know how you need to scale your application? Do you know how to monitor your application? Do you know how to take care of the logs? So that is how your expectations or responsibilities will be on the SRE side. Now, if they want a new team to be formed called DevSecOps, then the focus will be, okay, everything is there, but I want you to focus on how do you secure them. Now, whatever you run, so whether it is an infrastructure you are securing, whether you are securing a deployment or an application, you need to know how to secure them. So this is where what we wanted to do is come up with this new curriculum, okay, because with the market change, we also want to give the best. So that's where in this course, ideally we divide it into three major areas, where in the DevOps, you will be going through all those 9 or 10 best practices that I was talking. Okay. So for agile and release management, you will be focusing on tools like Git and GitLab. For infrastructure, you will be using tools like Terraform. And for configuration management, you will be using tool like Ansible. And then for deployments, you will be using tool like Docker, Kubernetes. And again, in Kubernetes, there are various levels like Kubernetes development, Kubernetes administration, right? And apart from that, for pipelines, we will go through tools like Jenkins. And we also have a new modern way of deploying, which is called as CI/CD or GitOps, and that is where tools like Argo CD or Argo Rollout will be there. Now, most of the people will just stop here saying this is DevOps, but as I said, market has started asking something more. Okay, and this is where in SRE, what we are going to do is, apart from just working on these tools, we also need to know how to monitor them. Okay, and that's where your tools like Prometheus and Grafana will come. But along with it, we also need to know how the logs will be taken care, because when your application is running, how do you manage those logs? And that is where tools like ELK or Elasticsearch, Kibana, Fluentd will be coming. But site reliability is not only to monitor this. Now, this is when you need to know how to monitor your application's performance. How do you do something called as observability and traceability? Okay, so what is observability? That's when for your application performance, you need to know how many inputs it is taking, how is the transaction happening, is the load adding more stress to the application, right? So technically we call it as observability and traceability. Now for those, you will be using tools like Jagger, Kiali, okay? And not just that, you want to do a better networking so that your application is always available. And that's where we use some things like service mesh or Istio or Calico, right? So these are a bunch of the tools that you will be running on top of your Kubernetes. This way, you take care of the automation in deployment, and at the same time, you focus on monitoring of your application and your entire site. And finally, on the DevSecOps, whether you are running a infrastructure, whether you are running an application, or whether you are running something as a container or in Kubernetes, you need to know how to monitor. Okay, even if you are trying to create a AWS machine or something in cloud, you should also know that whether it is secure. So that's when the DevSecOps part is also all of them. And eventually, now if you also want to add your profile so that you know more and more automation, then learning something like Python for your DevOps is also needed. Okay, so if you look at, these are all the skills that what a company needs. Okay, now here the trickiest part is, we never know what exactly a company needs out of this, because like I said, a company can call DevOps, but if you have noted, even by the name of DevOps, they will be asking questions from SRE, because they might not call the team as SRE, but still they will ask questions whether do you know how to monitor, do you know how to take care of log, do you know what is service mesh. Same way, you go to a company, the name they may call it as SRE, but still they will ask, do you know how to use Terraform? Do you know how to use Kubernetes? Do you know how to run the pipeline? Right? Same thing what happens in DevSecOps. So what is happening? Companies have some team, so they are trying to create new teams because there is a new requirement. So for that, the team can be called as DevOps, SRE, or DevSecOps. But in that, they kind of take the responsibilities or the tools what you are seeing, and they try to give it as a position. So eventually, now, like I said on the iPhone, the only way that we will be able to get a very good salary, it's because whether it is a 2 times or 3 times salary, is you are having all the skills, or I won't say all the skills, but at least if you can match 70 to 80% of what a company wants, then they will be able to give you. And not only that, now when you're applying, think in this way: what if 100 people are applying for the same position, whom they should call for the interview? So they will call only those people whose profile is relevant and they are talking about latest tools. So if you just talk about some old tools by saying I have worked in DevOps for 3 years or 4 years, they will still not call you for the interview, or in the screening round itself, they will filter. So what they want is relevant experience, plus they want experience who has problem solving on the latest technology, and you also should be familiar with all the new tools and technologies, because this is what the problem that they want to solve. Eventually, that's where we wanted to put it as one course which fits into all the needs. Okay, so ideally, now the focus, like what we were trying to say, is you're not going to just learn only DevOps, but what we want you to learn is a combination of different skills, because when you go to a company, whether you can call yourself as a DevOps engineer or SRE or DevSecOps, and not just now. So let's look at what will happen after other 4 or 5 years. Same thing is what we are trying to tell. So you might not be just working on the same tool. You might be working on multiple tools. Now, when you go to a company, as of now, they might not give you all this tasks, but slowly, if you see, they will definitely be asking you to work on these different tools. So at that point of time, if you are already familiar, if you just put a little effort and practice it again for the next 4 to 5 years, at least you should be able to always be on top of the market, and your profile will always be good. Okay, your career will be smooth. So that's the whole focus that what we wanted to do. So eventually, how we do for all of that is we always wanted to start with first going into all the prerequisites that is needed, because I highly recommend our candidates that not just jump into any tools, like don't try to learn Terraform or Kubernetes, but before that, what is the prerequisites that you need? So what do you mean by prerequisites? So do you first of all know what is release process? Do you know what is build? Do you even know what are the basics of your programming? Because you don't need to know how to write a program, but do you know what is the difference between Java and a Go language, or what is the difference between Java and a Go language, right? So those are the things what we call it as prerequisites. So we will start with that, and then we will learn about all the tools that is needed. And for every tool, we will be going through plenty of projects, but we will not just stop it. Eventually, what we want to do, we do more than 20 plus projects or 25 plus projects, but assume this way, all these projects are what we have created, and it's like pre-cooked and given to you. But now what will happen if you go to the company? Unless and until you have not practiced, you will not be confident. So this is where what we wanted to do is, especially if you are a fresher, or if you are from non-IT and you have time even for experienced also, we wanted to give something called as internship, where apart from the projects what we have already done, we will give you new projects in which we will mentor you, where we are not going to implement. We want you to implement, for which we will guide you. So this is how you will also do lots and lots of projects with our guidance. Plus, you will also do projects on your own. Now, this is the only way you will be getting more hands-on, more confidence, because when you are trying to apply, if they suddenly ask you a question like, oh, tell me what challenges you have faced, you don't have to cook up something, or you don't have to think something. All you have to do is go back in the day to day, whatever the projects you have done, what challenges have you faced, right? In a real time, you can just start telling it. So this is how easily for freshers or non-IT, you can take this experience as a 6 months or a 8 months experience, and you can add it to your profile. Okay. Especially for freshers and non-IT, you're going out, rather than telling that I have learned somewhere, you can tell I learned and I have done an internship for a 6 months or 8 months or 1 year. And this is how in this 8 months to 1 year, these are all the projects that I have done. So try to showcase in that way. And that's how all our recent candidates who have just placed, right, have been getting 6 lakhs or 8 lakhs or 9 lakhs even for a fresher. So especially if you are a fresher or a non-IT, then it's highly recommended that you go through this internship. Additionally, after you complete your course, do the projects by yourself, and we will mentor what to do. And with all the latest skills, when you go back and apply, eventually you will be definitely able to get any profile and crack any interview. Okay. So that's the whole purpose what we do. And obviously, now, each one of us are not the same. So what we will have to do is, post the classes, we will be again going with one-on-one sessions to understand what you are doing, how much of experience you have, how you should be applying, how your profile should be showcased, what kind of projects you should put, how do you convert, just like how I was telling in the beginning. If you are a developer, how you should convert your profile. If you are a QA engineer, how you should convert your profile. You are into operations, how do you convert? So those are the things that specifically we will be able to mentor, and through which you will be again able to switch with very ease, and also focus about how do you run in the same career for the next 4 or 5 years. Okay. So with all these said, the one last thing that I wanted to come back is, okay, As I said, there is a prerequisite. So what we wanted to do is, I ideally want to welcome everyone for the next 5 days, which we are going to have what we call it as the masterclass. And what is that we wanted to do in this masterclass? So before you start your actual DevOps learning, what are the prerequisites? So like I said, prerequisites is something like, do you know what testing is? What kind of testing happens? How does a developer work? You don't need to know programming, but do you know how those process works? So which is what we call it as agile. Okay. And then do you know what are the essentials of a program? Because I don't need to know how to write a Java program, but I told you about a build, right? So if in a company, a Java project is being developed, do you know how to build it? What are the basics that is needed for running a Java application? Same thing, if I give you a Python code, do you know what is it? Or let's assume that your company is moving into machine learning or artificial intelligence. Still, you don't have to know how to write an artificial intelligence code, but given that product, do you know how to create a product out of it, which is what we call it as building, and to run what is needed, correct? So those are what we call it as the essentials for supporting a application, right? And that's when your builds and automation of deployments will come. Okay. And apart from that, we also need to know what are the deployment, because on a very high level, I told you take the application, install the application and run. But do you know how to deploy? What and all is needed for running a Java application? What is needed for running a Node application? What is needed for a Go language, right? So those are the essentials that we need to know. Like, let's say an example of your laptop. You don't have to be a tech savvy to use laptop, but if you're using laptop, you should ideally know how to go to a web browser. You need to know how to open a Word doc. You need to know how to send a mail. So those are the basic things, right? Same way, what are you trying to automate using your Kubernetes, your Jenkins, your Terraform? It is an application. Now, I don't need to know the application, how to write the program, but if you don't know how to build it and how to run, definitely how will you going to automate it? Because that's the challenges that we will get. So eventually what we want to do is for the next 5 days, we want to completely go through it. And regardless of whether you are a fresher or you are completely from non-IT or even you are from IT, we want to have all the skills that you need before you get started. And not only that, we want you to kickstart with a full confidence, because only with this, if you start learning a tool, when you do a project, it will be very easy. Okay. Again, I will tell you an example. People will learn only tools like Jenkins and Kubernetes. Okay. Or Terraform. Now, in the interview, questions will not be like that. They will ask a question, an example. Can you tell me how many machines you had in your Kubernetes? Can you tell me what is the size of the machine? Now, for that, you cannot just blindly cook up some answers. So you need to know what is the release process, how frequently we are deploying and building, what application you are running. For example, if you are running a Java application, what is the minimum capacity needed? If you are running a Go language, what is the minimum needed? So based on that, we will be able to prepare. And not just that, they will might also ask a simple question. Okay, you are telling you are running something. Can you tell me how frequently you created a machine in AWS? Now that's a tricky question, but it's a simple question. Now you can answer it only if you know what is the proper release cycle. So when will someone use a new machine? When we will destroy a machine? So for those, definitely you need to know the release process. You need to know the programming essentials, which is what we call it as build, what is deployment, and eventually there are some tools related to it like Git and GitLab. So all those that is needed to support you to get started with your actual learning is what we put it as, what we call it as a masterclass. Okay. And obviously this is open for everyone. Now I highly recommend once again for all those, whether you are a fresher, again an experienced, or even from non-IT, we will make sure that you learn all those things from zero to a level where you can get complete confident to understand what is exactly needed for your DevOps or your SRE position. Okay. So feel free to reach back any one of us in the team, because we're going to start it from tomorrow. and it's going to be from the coming Monday to Friday morning 7 to 9. Okay, and yeah, you don't have to bring up any laptop or anything for those who are coming to classroom. Do come back, but bring your laptop so that once we finish the class, you can go back and practice. We will help you to set up what is needed. Okay, but if not, do make sure you attend all these. And if you are already familiar, then just try to brush up. But for those who are completely new, then it's a very good opportunity where you will learn all those things as a prerequisite. And with that confidence, start learning the actual tools like Terraform or Kubernetes or Docker. So that way, when you come to the project site, you will be able to easily understand how in a real time company works. And even when you're doing a project, it will look real time. If not, it will be just theoretically like what you can see in YouTube, nothing else. Okay, so that's what we are going to do. All right. So yeah, with this, would leave the floor for question and answers. But yeah, any questions so far? Online? Let me open it up. I'm sorry that I had to put most of you guys in mute. But yeah, questions? Yeah, I've unmuted you guys. Any questions?
Yeah, hi.
Hello, Adam.
Yep.
So, what will be the duration of this course if we include all these things like DevSecOps, SRE, and DevOps?
So if you're talking about DevOps and SRE, it will take around 2+ months of complete live sessions. Okay. But addition to that, we also have few things that I want you to go through self-learning. Okay. Especially the cloud ops. Why we wanted to do in that way is the most latest ones, the most important ones, and the complex one where we need help, right? That's where you're coming to us. So those are the things that we wanted to do more on the live classes. But there are certain things which you can start learning and by self-faith, and also these are good to have. Okay, if you add it into your profile, it will just give a added advantage. So that's how it's completely on 2 months, but again, a few days here and there might go additionally depending on how the project is there. But along with that 2+ months of live class, you will also have 1 month of self-learning, and then we go ahead with the internship. Because for internship, there is no timeline, but eventually it's after completing the course, you have to start doing the project. So if you are in and around Bangalore, you can come down and keep showcasing it on a regular way. Or if you are outside, then take the times like weekends and try to submit what you have done. That's how it is going to be. But along with it, if you're also kind of taking Python, then additionally, after we complete this 2+ months of live class, then you might have another 1.5 to 2 months of Python class, because that's how we wanted to take it up step by step. Because you do everything in one go, it will not be possible. Okay, so 2+ months of live class and 1 month of self-learning. And then if you're taking Python also, then it will be another 1.5 to 2 months of live class.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, hi. Are you going to include any cloud platforms in this course?
Yeah, AWS will be completely the platform that we have. That's what I mentioned as cloud ops. And not only that, whatever that we are going to do, we also need to showcase it on a cloud only. Because whether we are running Kubernetes, Docker, Jenkins, Terraform, from day one, we want to start doing it on cloud. So that's the same way when you go to company, you will also get that real time experience. Plus, you should also get familiar with the cloud in the same way.
Okay. What about self-scripting?
Sorry?
Shell scripting. What about self?
Shell scripting is already available on the YouTube channel for free. So you really don't want to wait for us. You can even go back and now learn it. See, that is what again I wanted to tell. I don't want to fool around where if I say I'll teach you everything in 1.5 months and that also 1 hour if I take, it's actually you are the one who are going to lose, correct? Because neither we will be covering any topic nor you will be getting real time. So that's the reason. If you clearly see, Shell scripting is something we have already put in our channel that we want people to go back. There's around a couple of hours that you can easily learn. But apart from that, what is more important, right from the scratch, all the technologies, what is needed, right? So we're going to focus that on live, and eventually there's some things like a couple of 10 hours or 2 hours, 12 hours that we want you to do some self learning is because those are the additional things which will just give you value. But if not, the primary skills what is needed on the DevOps is what we're going to focus, right? So feel free to ping us. We'll share you the curriculum also, or whatever that I've already shown on the screen. That's the same thing.
Yeah, Adam,
Is
is this
I,
uh, DevOps Ninja program an upgrade? Like, what is it for? Like, people that attended your program like 2 years ago? Like, is this an upgrade, or is there something new and
Yep,
added to this current
exactly.
program?
Yeah, so you, if you're familiar, I keep saying it, we don't stick to the same curriculum because we are DevOps engineers and we know what's the market, right? So I don't want to talk about what people had 5 years back, but what is current market. So that way, what you have seen 2 years are still people say by the name of DevOps only 4 or 5 tools like Docker, Kubernetes. But if you go back and look into the screen, literally whenever we say DevOps now, in Kubernetes itself, you have CKA, CKAD, and not just your CI CD, you also have things like Argo CD for GitOps. And in Argo CD, again, you have things like Argo rollout for different strategies. But apart from that, there are a lot of things that's been introduced into monitoring, and that's where the whole bunch of SRE tools is going to come into the picture. So definitely, if you have compared the course, there is a huge amount of change, but still the core concepts will be there. But like I said, with new challenges and new expectations with the market, we have just added all of them. So all those new tools, whatever that you see here, is something that we've been added into this Ninjas course.
Okay, thank you.
is Python included in the course, or do you have to pay extra money for this?
It's not like extra, it's up to you. How do you take? If you want to take up 2 months course live and 1 month where, then you can first take up only this. But if you also want to take Python, so obviously you finish this and then the next level you come to the Python, right? For us, it's definitely one course which will take 4 months of live class plus 1 month of self-learning. But it's up to an individual because do you have time for all of them, right? And is that your goal, what you want to do? So depending on that, you can take up the 2 months live class plus 1 month self-learning, or you can also include Python as a single course, and you can say it's a 4 month live class and 1 month self-learning.
What's the fee structure of this course?
Feel free to ping me or Arjun or in the number. I'll help you with the curriculum and the structure.
Thank you.
Adams, regarding that Pythons, you told me in earlier the 2 month for the DevOps, one for the Pythons, and another for the some the practicals. So Python is totally removed from this DevOps class. Yeah.
See, it is not like removed or added if you understand each one of them or modules. So whatever the live class that we are talking about 2+ month will be focusing on DevOps, SRE, and DevSecOps and the projects related to it. Now, if you also want the Python, then you will have to spend another 2 months after this, and which is where we will learn Python plus project specifically on the Python for our DevOps. So that's how we take step by step.
Hi,
Hi,
Adam.
Once
Adrian.
I joined this DevOps and SRE course, out of 10 years of experience which I have on VMware domain, how can I convert minimum 3 years or 4 years of experience out of 10 years saying that I worked on DevOps and SRE?
Okay, I'm not sure if you joined sometime back, but probably I'll just quickly go back, right? So you can follow any one of this. I mean, you don't have to exactly follow it, but this is just an idea. So what you need to start doing is, obviously, if you're working as a system admin on VMware, right, you might have taken care of ESX and certain other servers. Now, what you can tell, when you are working, you moved from your traditional VMs into cloud. And in this, you started moving yourself and started taking responsibility of any one of the cloud. And that's how your DevOps journey started. And from there, you can say you focused on automation for your infra, learned and worked on tool like Terraform, worked on tool like Ansible. And slowly from there, you can say you focused on monitoring, and that's where different tools like Prometheus, Grafana, or ELK, whatever Splunk, you can talk about it. And then you can say recently company wanted to completely migrate into container-based deployment, and that's when you started focusing and helping the company for Docker and Kubernetes, and eventually that leads to SRE, and that's when your monitoring, your traceability, or your observability-based tools are there, and end-to-end. This is how, yeah, if you can go on mute, that will be great. So that is how you can say with this journey of what you were as a VM admin couple of years back. I appreciate if everyone goes on a mute. If not, others will not be able to hear. Okay, so that's the way that you can convert your profile. Again, this is just an overview or a high level idea that I'm trying to give, but feel free to give a call if you have any specific question, right? Because again, see, don't expect that everyone ask only questions in this session, but we would love to help you understand your profile and we can talk deeper. But since you have been asking, and I think it's better from a high level you understand it. But again, feel free to give a call. Let's focus more into your profile specifically because I also want to understand a little more about it, and then we can exactly tell how do you convert. But you can take this as an reference on how do you switch, because end of the day you should still highlight your core exposure. With that, how you are going to convert your profile into all these latest. So that's how you should be able to say, as of now, you've been completely working into this. Got it?
One more thing. Can you share me the
Yeah.
number so that we can contact you?
You can have it on the chat if you see. If not, feel free to reach me in this number, whatever you see on the screen.
Hi, Adam.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm an ex-student of you. So when I see in the market, like I am into different region, uh, most of them are in like moving into Azure and GCP clouds. But I am like habituated with AWS, so my profile is going to be not like into getting more calls like that. So how can I overcome this?
See, that's where you're talking about the platform, because overall, if you look at, can everyone go on mute, please? I appreciate it. See, that's a good question again, but you understand the skill what you're talking is only on the platform. Okay. So whether you work on Azure or whether you work on AWS or GCP, the core skills are again going to be different. So for automation, you are still going to continue using Docker, Kubernetes, Terraform, or whatever the tools around it. But platform definitely is a change. So this is where all you have to do is you need to understand how the market is moving, especially if you are in a particular region, right? Let's assume, again, I'm saying UK, because you would see more of companies moving into Microsoft Shop. And that's where they will say, okay, you need to know all the skills, but additionally, if you are familiar with Azure as a platform, then it will be preferable for them. So that's when you know everything. For your journey, you just have to spend a little more time, try to compare between how AWS is there and Azure is there, and then it'll be easy for you to capture that market, right? So that's the whole purpose, that you understand the market. Yeah, there is definitely a learning. It's not like you learn once, it is going to stop. But as the market moves, you don't have to worry about everything, because just a little more specific to what market is asking, or from the region what you are working, what they need. If you learn that, it will be easy. Correct. So that is how, unfortunately, more and more things have been there. We cannot add. Probably down the line, we might have to have separate courses. That's where even now, if I'm saying these are the core skills what you need, but additionally Python is also being added as one of the core skill. But do you want to take it in the beginning? It's up to an individual, right? You don't have time. So that's the reason you're saying we complete first 2 months and then take up the other 2 months with Python. The same way now, you're familiar with all of them. Look into the market, The profile will almost be the same, but the only difference is instead of talking about AWS services, they might talk about something like Azure services. Then you need to just focus only on that and keep moving up in your profile, right? That's the ideal way that you should be moving.
If
So
I'll
in this
join in
course,
this
we will be.
course, sorry.
Adams, so as per my knowledge, the some my friends working on the DevOps engineer. Okay, so in that time he emphasized on that the select a script Pythons, and because you have to create the pipeline and things to the script, so script knowledge is necessary to means carry the job of the as a DevOps engineer. So Python should be not advanced level, should be this basic and the intermediate level.
Correct. See, earlier we were saying any one of the scripting is sufficient. That is where shell scripting, if you know, that was good. But what is happening, more and more automation are coming, and it is also like a trend. Okay, now everyone has started saying that you need to know Python. Whether you are using it or not, that is one skill that is needed. But what level of Python? You don't need to know the Python programming because you are not expected to become a Python programmer or developer. The expectation is for your DevOps or SRE, if there are some automation that is needed, instead of using shell scripting, you should be familiar to write a Python script, right? See, just like how I will say, companies are moving away from your Windows laptop and everyone has been given Mac. Even if you don't like Mac, you cannot say I will not use. You have to get used to it, right? So that has become a trend. The same thing is when I say scripting is definitely needed as one of the skill, and preferably which skill you should say in the scripting Python, if you know, that will be much more advantage for you because that will look more of the latest. And yes, you don't need to know the complete oops for Python to become a developer because here you are focusing on automation for DevOps or SRE. So from that way, understand the scripting and the essentials that will help you, like concepts like modules, right? So that is what you need to know so that you can connect to a database or a cloud or do some kind of automation on your machine. So definitely this is needed.
Heather,
Yeah.
as per my knowledge, AWS and Linux is needed for this course. So, is this needed or not?
What is it? AWS and
Lin-
I didn't get come again. AWS and
Linux.
AWS and Linux. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, can you go on mute? So if you look at the skill set, the very first skill set that I said what my company is expecting is platform, correct? So you are going to do some automation using Docker, Kubernetes, Ansible, Terraform, Jenkins, monitoring, whatever. So what is the platform you are going to use? So definitely you should be familiar with one cloud. So let's say AWS. So without knowing AWS, you will definitely not be able to do all those automation. And second, when you take a machine like how I'm showing you your Windows, obviously whatever you are going to install, run, everything is going to be on an operating system. So that operating system is going to be Linux, because whether you debug and take care of your day-to-day activities on whatever we are doing, so definitely your cloud and Linux are definitely needed for you. So those is more like, again, what we call it as a prerequisite, right? So you just definitely need.
Okay, thank you.
So after this, can I apply for cloud engineer too?
Yes, because again, you have to look at cloud engineer is also moving away. The positions of so-called cloud engineer is being converted into SRE because they don't need. Okay, I think you can go on mute. Yeah. So definitely you can apply as a cloud engineer, but let me also give you this. Positions of cloud engineer is also moving away. Why? They don't need someone only to take care of cloud administration. So they also want to do some automation. So they can call the designation as cloud, but they will again ask you to work on some DevOps tools or some SRE tools. So that's how the market is moving, right? So think on that way so that for the next 4 or 5 years, you should be able to survive. So that's the reason that don't worry about the designation, but look at the responsibilities, what you're going to work. That should be something which you are familiar.
Okay.
Yep.
Hello, them. My
Yeah.
background is non. I am from non-IT background,
Mm-hmm.
so I had no knowledge, any knowledge for this. So you start from scratch, not zero level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are going to start from scratch, but what I would recommend you is go through our channel. Okay, so we already have Linux and scripting videos, so you can start learning it on day by day. Okay, a couple of commands so that you get familiar with Linux and also get some basic idea of what is scripting. And then, obviously, like I said in the beginning, from tomorrow, we are going to have masterclass wherein whatever is needed for your DevOps journey or your SRE journey, we'll try to learn from scratch a level zero. Okay, assuming that you don't know. So what is that you need from a zero to become expert? So that's what the next 5 days that we are going to learn. So after this, and with the background of Linux, when you start practicing, when you go into the actual tools, it will be easy for you to learn and implement projects in it. Okay.
Hello, Adam.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, this master class of 5 days will be an overview of like what you will be doing in what we will be doing the next 2 months.
No, it's not an overview. It's exactly a different set. See, this is how what is needed. Like I said, right? We will actually learn those projects and everything on the class. But before you get started, do you know the familiarity of the concepts needed? But let me just give an high level idea. Okay. So you're going to use Kubernetes or Docker and you will know how to deploy an application. Okay, beautiful. But now let me ask the question. If you go to a company, there are different components. There will be front end, there will be middle tier, there will be API server, there will be back end. Now, for each one of them, they might be using Java or Spring Boot or AngularJS or Node.js or Go language, right? We don't know what type of programming or what type of application that is needed, correct? So, do you know what are the essentials for that? Because when people learn Kubernetes, or even if you go out and look into videos in YouTube, when they say Kubernetes, people will focus only on that. But for you, before even you go to that level, you should be familiar with these concepts. Because then, if I'm saying, okay, let me take a real time problem where there is a three-tier architecture or there is a front end or there is a back end. Now for that, for me to deploy it in Kubernetes, what and all I should know. So with the help of that, you will be discussing with your dev team or QA team, prepare the requirements. That is what is called as real time, correct? So that way, masterclass, we will be focusing on concepts like this. How do you differentiate, right? Do you even know what is the difference between a program language and a compile language? I don't need to know the deep of it, but do you know how to differentiate between a Java and a Node.js, right? That's what we are going to learn. And not just on that, we are also going to learn how do we build it, how do we deploy, what do you mean by deploy, and when it is running, what and all is needed for you to run, what tools are needed for that, correct? Now, same way, I was talking about release. Now, when I say a release, now the same question on Kubernetes, if someone asks you like, hey, can you tell me how many Kubernetes clusters that you have to run? Now the answer for that depends on who and all are using, when are you going to use. So then you have to go back, developers will use it, QA team will use, and your production team will use, or your customers will use. So how many customers are there? How many QA teams are there, right? And how many development team or how many members are there? So to understand, you also need to know the testing. And then let's assume you are going to say pipeline. You are using some pipeline like Jenkins or tools like Argo CD, and you are doing a deployment in Kubernetes like CI/CD. Now, how many times you have to do? How much of capacity you need for your cluster depends on the number of testing to do. So that's when we also need to know what are the different testing we are doing, when we will do the testing, and when we need to use the actual Terraform or Jenkins or Kubernetes for that. So that's how the tools on where exactly to use and how to use is what you need to know. So that's the part of what we call it as masterclass. So in masterclass, you understand the release processes, the entire agile concept, understand what do you mean by builds and deployments or different application. And not just that, you will also learn concepts like version controlling and tools like GitLab. So anything that is needed for us to kickstart our actual real-time work, right? We will cover it. And then when we go to learning the actual Terraform or Docker or Kubernetes, when I take a real-time example, only then you will be able to understand. If not, no matter how many videos you see, you will not get that real time. So real time is not if I tell, oh, you know what, I am working in Uber, I am working in Google, this is the project. But do you really know why you did it? Do you really know why you used some capacity? Or for example, if I say I used a machine of 2 GB, do you know why did you even use a 2 GB machine? Correct? That is what we call it as the prerequisite, and we wanted to put into masterclass. So definitely whatever you are learning from the masterclass is going to be a lot of information that you gain to do the projects in real time in the later part. Okay, so that's how masterclass is for two purposes. One, for you guys to understand how the training will be, and second, to get into a real time and you want to showcase of 3 years or 4 years, you need to know a lot of things on how company works and a lot of technologies or the terms, or in IT we call it as jargons, right? So all those things and the tools related to it is what we are going to learn for the next 5 days.
So hello,
Yep.
do you charge for this one for 5 days or what?
Well, if you can read the screen, I've clearly mentioned it's free. So I'm most happy if you can join the next 5 days, which is going to be free.
And one more question is, I'm currently working, okay, in development team. So my question is, do I get the job for part-time basis? Because I
Uh,
don't want to leave the job right now. Because
what do you mean
side by
by
side, I
part-time
want
job?
to like the work from home, something like that.
Well, that's completely up to your ability because you have to be careful. You can't do moonlighting because that is what companies will strictly say that while you're working in one company, you cannot work for another company. Correct? But it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that you should not be doing anything else. So you can finish your company's work, and when you have a free time, which could be like on a weekends, you can spend complete day, right? Or something like 1 hour in a day after your work. If you want to do something that is completely up to your interest, and there are a lot of remote positions that you can take. Okay, so that is how you can do.
Yeah.
But
The thing is, mastering everything in IT, you have to spend a lot of time. It's not a piece of cake. You can just have it and you understand and you can go through it. It's not so easy as my experience is. So we have to spend a lot of time and we have to do, as you said, real-time projects. Then only we can come up and we can work on this because I'm changing the platform from myself, from the development to the DevOps or something somewhere around. But changing this one, there should be instability of the job and all. So it's kind of be risky, for me to take a step. So that is the reason
exactly.
what I thought is to have a work as a part time, some like you said on weekends or sometimes something like that. If you work on this, if you have full confidence on this, then we can really run on the projects. Otherwise,
Okay.
we'll be stuck and people will ask many questions and we'll get stuck. That means it will be a bad remark on us.
Okay, let me add just few points to what you are just saying. Definitely, what you are saying, I don't want to call it as a part-time because if you are going to someone and saying that I will work on DevOps for part-time because I want to get hands-on, no one will give you a job for that. Okay, because even to do a part-time, you need to have experience, and that's exactly what we are talking about in this program, right? If you have closely watched, I mentioned something called as an internship program, and that is the purpose what we want to do. So for those people like you who want to take out something extra effort as a seniors, where whatever we are just going through is not sufficient, you definitely want to do something hands-on, do more and more latest things, and do a lot of problem solving. And those are the additional projects that we will be able to give you. So you can definitely take it. get that hands-on experience, what you're talking, for another 1 or 2 months additionally, and then go back. And with that experience, if you want to do part-time or you want to take up some additional projects anywhere on your free time, you will definitely be able to add weightage to your profile, right? So that's the purpose.
And one more question is, what is the size for the DevOps team in a company?
Well, it
Usually.
depends on it. It depends. We can't just give an answer, but it depends on two factors. One, what is your team responsible for? Okay, which means
Okay.
is a DevOps team only focusing on deployments, builds, or your DevOps team is also focusing on monitoring, infrastructure creating, or your DevOps team is also focusing on production support or SRE activities. So that is one, because depending on that, more people might be needed. And second thing is how many people that you're serving. For example, you're joining a product which has 100 people, then for 100 people, what and all automation is needed, then you have to define a number for it. But let's say you are going to a very large company and you are a centralized team and you have like thousands of people to support, then I might need a team of more than 10 or 15 people, right, across the globe. So that's how the size of your team depends on what responsibility your DevOps team is taking care. And second thing is how many people or how many tools that you're trying to serve. So based on that, you can define anywhere between 5 people or 10 people or 15 people.
Okay.
Hi, hi,
Hi,
Adam.
Yeah.
AWS course, is it a self-learning one?
Course is a complete live course which will be online and classroom. So whatever the classes, the master. Sorry.
AWS one. Amazon.
Yeah, that part,
Cloud.
the cloud ops part will be self-learning. But apart from that, whatever is needed, we will go through in the class on a regular basis.
Okay, and how about the fees? Is it it depends on the each profile or it's not common one? Because it's not revealed
No.
here.
Yes, you can give us a call or just ping us anyone, Arjun or someone, right? We'll be able to give you the curriculum. So it basically depends on the modules that you're taking, whether you're taking the 2+1 month module or 4+1 month modules. So depending on that, the fees will be there. So yeah, feel free to ping us. I'll be happy to share those details.
Hi, Adam.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to ask again because I'm a bit confused. Uh, where I said earlier, I was into different region. So is it helpful to join, like if I want to know about Azure DevOps and Azure Cloud as well? So I was a bit confused to select this program or not, because I'm into July 23rd batch. I saw a little bit new things, that's sure, because I have seen the I have been to couple of your courses, so I know there was a difference. But my point is, like, if I want to learn cloud, is it the right program to select or not? Azure Cloud.
See, that is what, if you are talking only about Azure, that is not something what we are focusing here. So that will be on top of what we are trying to do, right?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, Adam. So, hello.
Yes.
So these sessions will be recorded, right?
Every day the sessions will be recorded like what we are doing today, and
Mm-hmm.
we will be putting it up back on our app. So it will be
Mm-hmm.
accessible, because we know when we go through 2 hours class in a day, it is not like we spend 1 hour and then ask you to practice. We will go through that 2 hours for learning. So you'll have lots and lots of content available with you. So definitely you need more time to go through, practice it. So that's where we record every day, which will be live class, and we'll be giving it to you for later purpose that you can refer.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Adam, and which project you are going to use in the class? Like, I mean, the language, whether it's a Python or Java based, because
We'll use
steps
everything.
may differ for Java.
Correct. So that's why we wanted to learn in this master class, right? First understand what's the difference between this Java and a Node or a Python. And then when we do projects, you're going to just back up that and we will be doing those real-time pipelines or deployments. But eventually, that's what we want to start from masterclass to go through all of them.
Hi Adam, is there any prerequisite of things you should know, like networking or Linux or stuff like that, and up to what level should a person know? I mean, how much knowledge he should
Well,
have if it is a prerequisite?
see, if you are familiar with Linux basics for a day-to-day usage, the same thing network, that should be more than sufficient. But anything else that is needed from a problem, from a topic wise, that we will try to go through in the class. But that's where definitely right. If we start from what is Linux, what is ls command, I'm going to just waste your time in teaching. But instead, that is where I said, if you are completely new to those, go to our channel. There are a couple of hours of videos. You can just do self-learning. But from there, whatever is needed for an application or when you are running, whether it is Kubernetes or networking. So those are the things which we will go deeper into the live classes. So that's how you do those, a little bit of effort that you put from your side, and remaining things you will be able to do, right? Rather than we telling that I will teach you everything and try to spend and waste time in those things which is not at all needed for you to come in live classes. So that's where. So yeah, start with basics of Linux in our channel, and again it also includes some basics of networking. It should be more than enough, and anything else apart from that, that's what we're going to cover from masterclass and as we move towards in each tool.
Hanson, one career guidance question. Like I'm having a
Mm-hmm.
13 years of experience, so at this
Mm-hmm.
point, will be will it be suitable for me to switch to the DevOps domain?
Well, definitely it is needed. That's what I was just trying to give an overview, because when you're moving with a higher experience, what are you going to be an expert in, right? And definitely you can't say I'm doing the same job. So for that, maybe I would like to talk to you a little more details. Feel free to give me a call, because let's understand what is your current profile, what and all you have done, and how is your next 4 or 5 years is going to look. Because no matter what is your core skill, like I said, the new skills is what company is expecting. But whether you like it or not, you need to know that skill. But out of that, you can be specialized in one or two area, do some certifications that will add more value to your prior experience. So that's how, definitely. So to move forward, you definitely need to know new skills, right? That's the way. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I see there's a lot of disturbance. I'm sorry for that. But I appreciate everyone at joining the class. But uh, please do ping us for awesome. I'm going to mute everyone. Sorry for that. Yeah, sorry. The reason I've been asking everyone to be on mute is I'll be able to answer all the questions. But anyway, I appreciate you guys being staying back. But if you still have any questions for your career, feel free to reach us directly, or if you're interested to join the next masterclass, let us know. For the next 5 days, we'll be able to help you whether you're coming online or classroom. But even it doesn't mean you have to ask all the questions only today. Even you can ask questions on the next 5 days after this. But anything on your career, feel free to reach us or reach me or Arjun. I'll be able to help you. Okay. But if not, thanks guys. I appreciate you being there for a long time, and have a good weekend. I'll talk to you tomorrow on the masterclass. Thanks for joining. Thank you.
Adam, may I know
Yep.
your background? What is your overall experience in your
Okay. I have close to 19 years of experience, and like I said, I'm being more as a senior architect, and I've been working in different companies. I've worked with Oracle, I've worked with Amazon, I've worked with Juniper. I can just name a bunch of companies that I have, and I've been mentoring and training more than thousands of people. Okay, and I've been doing this as a mentor, and I've been into the training for the past 8+ years. So that's how I have the industry experience of mentoring multiple people, handling different customer requirements, and been working in all to this. So the reason why we are able to give this changes in the curriculum and talking about the tool is this is what we also start working. So we know what is the market, and because of that, we do it. So that's my background.
Adam,
Yep.
uh, I just wanted to know how much does the automation in DevOps field would affect the jobs in DevOps field in the future? I just had the confusion before choosing it because, like AI, now we have DevOne in the market to automate things in DevOps. So just wanted to know about that.
So whatever the jobs that you are seeing, whether it is DevOps or SRE, you are going to have at least 30% of operations, right? Or 30 to 40% of operations, and remaining everything is going to be automation. And by saying it, the more and more the senior you become, your work will be into the architecture and in the designing aspect of it. So any kind of job you take, definitely there is going to be at least around 70% of automation, and the remaining 30 to 35% or 40% will be on the operations. The tools might change. What you are trying to solve will be different because whatever the tools that you take, it will change. But eventually, that 70% of the work is what is being expected. And that's when you go to companies, the more and more automation that you do, your pay scale will also be more. But end of the day, everyone has to do some operations to run and maintain because that is going to be your bread and butter of the day to day, right? But yeah, there are companies which will give you 50% of operations, and in that there will be a lot of things you have to deal with customers, talking to people, right? Business justifications, documentation, those kind of architectural work will happen. But eventually, the more and more the automations and more and more, or sorry, less and less operations you're doing and more automation, and you're focusing on the customer side, your profile will be growing and your salary will also grow in that. So that's how you should focus. But there is no job which will be 100% automation. That is impossible. But I can say to the least 30% is definitely needed for operations. Okay.
Yeah, Adam, thank you.
Cool. Yep. Let's talk more on the next 5 days. But yeah, if not, feel free to give us a call for any other questions. Appreciate you guys joining. Have a good day and a good weekend. Thanks, guys. Thank you.